Hi, everyone. Welcome to the screening of Discovery-Based Filmmaking, which is one of our youth classes here at MATV, soon to be UMA. Welcome. Give us a round of applause. All right. This is a very nice audience. Thank you for coming to support our young filmmakers. This class is a very short class. It only has 6 hours. In 6 hours, the students have to make a film in different groups. We actually have made 6 films in this class, which is very impressive. You're going to see those 6 films, and you're going to find out how the students were successfully able to make those films in such a short period of time. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the instructor, Tom Flint, for this class.
Thank you, Haley.
You're welcome.
So yes, as Haley said, my name is Tom Flint, and I have a background in film education. And I spent quite a bit of time living overseas, and I moved back to the US a few years back. And one of the things that I learned about living overseas was how sometimes when you don't know what you're working on, that can actually lead to really, really interesting insight and really interesting discoveries. Because when I studied film here in the US as a film student in Philadelphia, my instructors were always telling me about the importance of having a clear vision and knowing what you wanted to say as an artist, as a filmmaker. But sometimes that can actually preclude discoveries that might be made otherwise. So the approach that I'm kind of interested in as a filmmaker and also a film instructor is to kind of let go of that control and to see what happens through the process when you really, really take advantage of what filmmaking is about, which is about collaboration, it's about process, it's about creativity, and just kind of going with the flow. So that was kind of the approach that we took for this course, which was Discovery-Based Filmmaking. And instead of working from scripts and storyboards and kind of going through this standard approach for filmmaking, which starts with pre-production, getting all your planning right, then going into production, and kind of executing what's already been decided, and then post-production where you just kind of glue the pieces together, we just kind of melded all of those stages together where it was just going for it and trying to create something that hadn't been made before. It was as simple as that. So hence Discovery-Based Filmmaking. So over the period of these 6 hours, which is broken into 2 different days, the students actually put together 6 films. If you guys have ever made films before, that's something that's really, really difficult to do because you have to bring your ideas together, you have to discuss them, you have to think about the choreography, how you're going to film it, what kind of angles you're going to use, and the story, how you're actually going to tell the story. So it's like constant problem solving. So to create these 6 different short films in this limited period of time and have them all come out so different and diverse is really, really quite extraordinary. So I've seen the films, and I think one of the great things about them is how different they are from each other. So you guys will see that in a moment. And basically what we did is we had, let me think, it was 4 different assignments. So I gave the students 4 different kind of problem-based filmmaking assignments where they had certain parameters that they had to work within. So they had like an hour and a half to make this film. And they had to find a way to tell a story. So it was like, okay, go ahead, you've got an hour and a half, or however long it was. They had this limited location here at MATV. We have the kitchen, we have downstairs, we have some props, we have the bathroom, we have the studios, but it was like, okay, with these constraints that we're working within, how can we actually make this happen? So, and they really rose to the occasion. It was putting their ideas together and saying, oh, let's do that. Oh, let's shoot it there. Maybe we can use this kind of angle. Yeah. So I was trying to tick all those boxes and really enjoying the process, and I think you guys did really well with that. So, let me quickly introduce the students here. So we have Natalie over here. Yeah. And we've got Miles. Yes. And you're hiding. Your daughter. Okay. All right. We've got Emily. Yeah. And we've got Zoe. And we've got Finn. And our two helpers, which also acted in the films and helped out with the filmmaking, Ali and Magenta, who are Emerson students right now studying film. So I will quickly get into it. So what we're going to do is essentially screen all these 6 films. Before each film, I'm going to give you a quick kind of context of what the assignment was. Then you'll be able to watch it kind of understanding that. Then we will talk very briefly about each of the films afterwards. And I want you guys to be involved in the discussion, ask questions, point out things that you thought were interesting, things that you didn't quite understand. Yeah, I mean, really respond to what's up there. Okay. So the first film I'm showing is an assignment that we had, which is called the Lumiere Minute. And the Lumiere brothers were the first ever filmmakers back when cinema was born in the late 1890s. So late 1800s, sorry. So in 1895. They were from France, and they put together these films under these enormous constraints because film cameras back then were huge, and you couldn't move them, and there was no sound. And the film that they were actually shooting on, the 35mm film, could only stay in the camera for a certain period of time, which was about a minute. So if you compare the films that we have today, like the Marvel films, to these films that are just 1 minute long, the camera does not move. They're in black and white, of course, no sound, and it's just people kind of performing in front of the camera because it was a novelty back then. So kind of inspired by that, we watched a couple of the Lumiere films from the 1890s, and then their assignment was to create their own Lumiere Minute, working within the same constraints that the Lumiere brothers had 125 years ago, however long it was. So the constraints for this project were your film must connect in some ways to the theme of dailiness. This idea of just what happens in the everyday life. You know, not over-dramatizing anything, but what is the daily life like? Because that's what happened in the Lumiere films. They would just put the camera on the street and cars would go by, or people would walk by, and to them that was amazing because they were capturing reality. They had to choose a location within MATV. They had to keep their camera stable. They had to lock it down, like the Lumieres had to do. So that was a Lumiere limitation. The films had to be exactly 1 minute long, 60 seconds exactly. The film couldn't have any sound, so it was a silent film. And every member had to appear in the film. So they had these constraints, working with the theme of dailiness, and they had to kind of put that into a story. And we had about, how long did we have for that? That wasn't much time, was it? An hour or so. And where did you guys film it? Yeah, right here on this very stage. Excellent. So anything you guys want to say to set up the film? Okay. All right. Fair enough, fair enough. But you guys will see it. And yeah, I think it's quite extraordinary what they were able to come up with, considering they had all these different limitations to work within. And yeah, so the main goal of this project was to create a film. I think you guys might remember what I was going to say. Create a film that had to feel as though it was just occurring. So even though it was staged, even though the camera was set up, it had to feel as though the camera was just accidentally recording and these people were kind of living their lives. So it couldn't feel like it was a stage performance. So it involved performance. It involved figuring out how people would actually move, how people would actually communicate. So capturing a moment from 2019, a 1 minute, so that people in the future who watch it would say, oh, this actually happened. So that was the main kind of thing. Okay, go ahead. that seems, that actually took a lot of work, didn't it? It was a lot of figuring out, first of all, where to put the camera, what everyone's role was going to be, how people were going to move around so you could see what was happening, and how to actually have a story come out of that. So I'm going to pick on you two, Miles and Natalie. Tell me a little bit about how many takes did it take to get that shot?
So we could only do one take, so we had to practice it until we had it like perfect, so that when we like filmed it, it would be, you know, how it was supposed to be.
Right. I think I told you you had like one bullet in your gun.
And every time there was something wrong with it, like maybe one person was blocking another, or like something didn't feel right, or it's just difficult.
But you guys were able to finally get there. I remember one challenge was getting it to stop at exactly 60 seconds.
Yeah. So we had to have one character leave. So we had one person who wasn't in at the beginning, so they could start it, and then they would come in, and then another person would leave and turn it off, because everyone had to be in it. So that's why it was.
Yeah. You guys did really well with it. Yeah. Comments from the audience, questions, anything? Yes.
So, how did this actually work?
That's a good question. Did you believe it? Did you see what was going on? Yeah, it's got a sense of believability to it. Absolutely. So your character, Miles, like you were kind of like the kid coming home after school and seeing your grandma.
Yeah, an annoyed grandson, which was what that was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you had that little like ankle twist thing going on. It was good. Excellent.
Your hair is different now.
Yeah, yeah. These guys like raided the prop closet on every single film we did.
And we spent like half the time in there.
Eventually we just had to be like, okay, we have to start now.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we spent 10 more minutes in there, so.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Like, the prop was like, it was like real, like when it happened. And when it happened, it actually felt real, and like it was happening in the 1918s.
Interesting. Wow, that's a compliment. Very cool. So you felt like you were taken back to a different time period.
Yes.
Very cool. I like that. What element in particular? Why did you feel that?
It was like not that normal. Nobody like talks that quiet in a movie. So it felt like I was in the 1980s. Like I took a portal to the 1980s.
That's so incisive.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way like I felt it was like real.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I time traveled from a different period.
You guys hear that? Your film was like totally transported.
Like I built myself a portal and went to the 1918s.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Awesome. Thank you. What's your name? Charlotte. Nice to meet you. Very good comment from Charlotte. Okay. Great. Anybody else, or should we go on to the next picture?
Move on. No, we're moving on.
She doesn't.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this next one was we did it as kind of like a warm-up project on the first day, and the idea here was to work from a concept. So rather than working from a script with lines and dialogue and things like that, the idea was just to work from a concept, which in this case was misunderstanding. What does that mean? You know, people associate misunderstanding with maybe it's people misunderstanding each other, or it's related to social issues, or whatever that may be. It could be anything. So I just kind of threw that theme out there and saw what the group could do with it. But in this case, it was a 5x5 project. Do you guys remember what a 5x5 is? What's a 5x5?
So a 5x5 just means we only had 5 takes. Like we had to film 5 shots, and that was it, no more, no less.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, with 5 different angles.
Yeah, exactly. So 5 shots, 5 angles. Exactly. So it had to relate to the theme of misunderstanding. It had to be a 5x5. It had to tell a story of some kind. I'm just reading this off right now. And they had to use in-camera editing, which means that they weren't editing on the computer like films are normally made, where you shoot everything and then you edit on the computer afterwards. They had to actually think about the order in which their shots would have to take place. So they had to think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they shot it in that order. So it would just play like that. Had to be silent, and everyone had to appear in the film. Okay. So this is the 5x5. I think you guys only had about 15 minutes. That was a warm-up project, so they only had about 15 minutes to do all of that. It was really, really quick. Yes, so how was that project? Was it difficult?
It wasn't difficult per se. It was just not great because we didn't have a lot of time, and we had to base it around a prompt that was already given to us. And, you know, we only had like 5 shots, so we had to portray this whole thing in 5 shots. So at some times we were like, we don't have enough. We have to like figure out something else to add. And other times we were like, oh, that's too many shots. We can't use that. So it was just like a lot of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did this relate to the concept of misunderstanding?
So it's not extremely clear, but it's supposed to be that this girl is getting ready to hang out with this guy, and she thinks that it's like a date, it's like a romantic thing. But then, so when he opens the door and then some friends come out, she's like, oh, it's just a friend thing.
Hate when that happens. Yeah. So that was a great story, and the way you guys actually shot it, I thought was really, really good at telling that story. And again, that was something you had to think of in like 3 or 4 minutes. Then I was like, okay, we got to shoot it. So yeah, good job. So we're actually kind of short on time, so let's move forward. Next film, please. So this project was something we shot earlier today. This is a long take project. Long take is when you have a shot in a film that continues and continues and continues without cutting. So sometimes you see it, it's a technique that's used quite a bit. And the film will just follow an actor, and then they'll open a door, and the camera will go through the door and kind of go behind them, and maybe it'll swing around and lead them. But it does it without cutting, which is what is often used when you see films. So the idea here was to make a long take film that had to be at least 60 seconds, had to be only one shot, and the camera had to be constantly moving. Constantly moving. It couldn't stay still. And it had to contain a story of some kind with a conflict that is resolved. That was it. Those were the constraints. And we had 2 projects here. We had 2 different groups today. We had more people. So we'll watch each of the films. So, yep. Haley, go ahead. So Emily, very quickly, what was the story there, and what was the conflict? What was resolved?
So there's this girl who needs to go to school, but she finds all her hats ugly, and she just can't find the right outfit. So then she's like, oh, I'm really hungry. Let me go in my fridge. And she's like, oh, there's nothing good in my fridge. So then she goes into her freezer, and then she's like, oh, a poncho. She's like, I can't eat my poncho. So she was like, oh, I get breakfast at school. And she runs out the door, and she's like, my head is cold. So then she looks in the microwave, and she finds some nuts and a hat. A sombrero.
Sombrero in the microwave. That could have been your title, right? Sombrero in the microwave. Yeah, right. True, true. Excellent. Miles, you want to say something?
No.
No, you're good? You're good? All right.
I was just told to hold
The film speaks for itself, right? Okay, excellent. Sorry? There is. There's one more. So this is the other group's film, same constraints. Right? Long take. Here we go. Okay. Any questions or comments here about this project? Yes.
It was incredible.
I'd like to know what the plot was. All right, y'all ain't ready for this. So what happened is,
Southern y'all.
okay, so what was happening was she was sitting there, she was watching a horror movie, she was having a good time, and then all of a sudden the lights started flickering, and she's like, "What?" And then a monster is like, "Tap tap," and she's like, so she runs away, and the monster is chasing her, but then the monster is just her friend pranking her. So then the friend feels bad and brings her a plant.
Perfect. You never bring me plants when I'm sad.
Nicely
I
explained.
have a question for the creator of the film, Miles. Why do you not bring me plants when I'm sad? We are friends.
Some random, very random trivia. I told you guys that I was living overseas. I was in Japan for a while. And if you bring somebody a potted plant who's staying in a hospital, it's like the worst thing you can do. Oh, really? Do you guys have any idea why? If it's a potted plant.
They're gonna be there for a while?
Yeah, exactly. It's a sign of like being rooted in some location that they don't want to be in. So you can bring them cut flowers. Great. Any other comments? Should we move on? Okay, great. So this was the kind of the final project, and you can put audio on for just this first film. Okay. And guys, what was this project? What was the assignment?
We. Quiet down, Phoebe. I told you to calm down. So, the prompt was a person who wakes up and doesn't know who they are, where they are, and then we each got like a word that we had to use to like tie into the play. The
Yeah,
movie.
I think I might have called it cinema charades. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like charades, but they had to, as Emily's explaining, they had to reveal their word that was given to them secretly, with only their group knowing through the film. So we're all gonna guess what the word is when we finish watching it. Did you want to add anything? Sorry.
The second one is better.
First one is better.
Okay, great. So, Yeah, and they had to be exactly 1 minute. Okay, so it would involve some editing. What was I going to say? So yeah, we're going to watch the films and try to understand from the story, from the feeling of the film, what that concept that I gave them may have been. Okay, so think about it in terms of thematics as you're watching it. Okay. You guys are showing the bear claw some love. I love it. That's a popular prop. All right, so this is kind of a tricky one. Anybody want to guess what that theme was? Yes.
Bad days.
What'd you say? Upset. Good guess. Good guess.
Natalie had a bad day.
Annoyance is actually kind of close. Annoyance. Yep. Good guess. Good guess. Not quite there. Yeah. Do you guys want to give him like a bit of a hint?
I don't know.
No, I cannot.
So it's something that the main character is struggling to do, kind of. No. No.
Feel pain.
What happened to your alarm?
Connect.
What happened to your alarm?
Live.
It's a noun. It's a noun. It's like something that you
I don't know what nouns are.
think about the emotions that she was showing scene after scene, like when she was in here.
Forgetting.
Frustration.
Confuzzle.
That's actually really difficult, isn't it?
Confuzzle.
Confuzzle. Yes.
What it is?
Okay. So what is it?
The word is tolerance.
So how does it connect to tolerance?
Because the person is just getting so much, like, she's just getting so annoyed, and her tolerance is just like weakening. Like everything that happens, like this guy that she doesn't know who he is because she doesn't know what's going on, is like, what up? And she's like, ew, I don't know you, stop. And then this kid behind her in class is like poking her and annoying her. This kid's getting like so annoyed. And then some random bear claws just like for no reason just there. So she gets so annoyed she just like runs away and starts crying because her tolerance is just, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. And shall we move on to the final film? And Haley,
Ours
can
is
you
better
tell
than
the
the
audio
second
cast?
one.
The better one.
Incorrect.
Okay.
I came up with the concept, and I was the Nona. I would like to explain.
Do you want to explain what a nona is?
There is 3 Italian grandmothers, nannies, nanas, and nonas. Nanas, they are fun, caring, and not mean. And then nannies are like mostly mean, but like sometimes nice. And then there's nonas. You do not mess with a nona.
Okay, me now? Okay. So, the plot, basically. So the beginning... Okay, let's start from the great part. The great part is a
The
flashback.
nona is cutting
Shut
a
up.
chicken.
Shut up. Shut up. Okay, so the great part is a flashback. That happened first. My character tried to steal the cookies, and Nona got very mad and threw my character out. But then, Nona feels bad and goes out to get my character.
And I love the flashback, by the way. That was really, really good.
And then, Nona and my character,
Make a pie.
we bake.
A pie. Okay, a pie. Chicken pie.
And then we went and we gave Magenta's character the pie. And then we were like hugging because we like each other again.
Now guess our word. Guess the word now.
Giving.
Wrong. I don't know. What is it?
You being a weird Nona.
Forgiveness.
Very close.
Love.
You're wrong.
Is it redemption?
These are all great guesses, though. You guys are like...
I have something. I think it's. Wait, can I hold it?
No.
It's the correct answer is Evelyn being a bad Nona. Half good.
Those are all wrong. Would you like us to reveal what it is?
Yeah, sure.
Harmony. They are in perfect harmony making a pie. A chicken pie. A chicken pineapple pie. A chicken wheat pineapple pie. Very yummy.
Did you want to add anything, Miles?
No, he was just taking it.
Okay, okay.
I was just taking it because Emily will ramble on for hours and we don't need that.
Good, good. So that's it for the films. It's actually... we've gone 35 minutes over. So we apologize for that. But thank you all so much for coming out. And I hope you guys all had a great time and enjoyed these films. And one final round of applause.